Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. I say many times at the inception of the show that we have a treat. It could be no more true today. We actually have members of Mike Hagen's strength team. We have John Andrickson and we have Warren Alford here. I did a little show prep. I remember their names. I sometimes interview people that I've known almost all my life, and I still don't remember their name. In this case, I'm going to pay respect to these guys because they're a lot bigger than I am. When we come back, we're going to talk to John and Warren about what is Mike Hagen's strength team. These guys share their testimony, feats of strength. They get the attention and engage young minds, allowing them to get the message, which after all is the reason for them appearing. They're going to be around town here in Chipley all week long. Hopefully you'll get a chance to see them. If not, hopefully at least virtually you'll be able to meet them through this show. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guests today are two members of Mike Hagen's strength team. We have Warren Alford and John Andrickson. Right. You guys have got a huge, busy schedule this week, and you carved out the time to have lunch with us at Kiwanis, which we're getting ready to do, but more importantly, come into our studio here on the college campus, and thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Oh, yes, sir.
It's an honor.
Honored to be here. Excited to be in the Chipley area.
When Forrest told me you guys were coming, I had already known about you, had seen some of your PR stuff, in the past elsewhere.
Sure.
And so I immediately started taking testosterone shots and working out. And and I failed miserably because I still look like the little guy on the stage.
Oh man.
You guys got here a couple nights ago?
Yes. John, you arrived on
Saturday. I've been here since Saturday, where I had the pleasure the next day to drive to Tallahassee, where I was able to use my second language, which is Spanish, and preach at a couple churches, one in Bonifay, but in the morning in Tallahassee, which was awesome. Cristo Fusion, it's called. They're a church sponsored by another church that's there in the area that allows them to use their facility. And they're just an upcoming church, growing church on fire for God and the Word of God, the gospel. So it was really cool that I got the chance to do that.
Warren, in a thumbnail sketch, because you are on the board of directors of the organization, talk a little bit about Mike Hagen, his vision, and what you guys actually do.
Okay. Well, Mike Hagen, I met him the year 2000. He was actually, at that time, the vice president of the power team. And I pastor a church there in Americus, Georgia, and we had the power team come in, and that's where I met Mike. And over the course of some things happening, that's how I ended up joining the strength team. I was a bodybuilder in the early 90s. Mike recognized that I had a heart for the youth of America, and he asked me to join the team. And basically that's what the strength team, that's how the strength team started, is Mike's heart for youth, kids across our country, the schools, and not only that, we're a Christian organization. Mike has a vision to reach the lost with the gospel of Jesus, and he learned a lot of things when he was with the power team, brought that on over into the strength team, the same concept of doing feats of strength, lifting logs. I mean, John, he jumps into fire and breaks bricks with his hands and forms, and all of this stuff, we call it, it's like bait in one sense of the word.
Absolutely.
People will come out to see these guys do these crazy feats of strength, and then we're able to share our testimony. And we see thousands of lives, touched that way.
You have to find some way to engage those fertile young minds.
That's right.
Because they're living on their smart device.
Yes.
It used to be we complained about Nintendo and the Xbox, but those have kind of gone away.
Simpler times.
Yes.
They're carrying it around with them. Everything's wireless. They go to bed, they don't need a flashlight to do it anymore. They're just on their screen.
Exactly.
They've also got a short attention span. When I was in radio and television, when I was first there, we did everything with 60-second commercials, and people would watch 60-second commercials. They went to 30-second commercials, and I said, man, there's no way in the world that I can say what I need to say. Well, not only did I do that, but within a very few years, they went to 15 seconds. So now radio commercials are either 10 or 15 seconds long, 20 or 25% what they used to be, not only 20 years ago. So that means that you've got minutes, literally, if that, to be able to engage somebody, get their attention long enough.
Sure.
John, when did you join the team, and what's your history with it?
I'm going on now my 4th year with the strength team. I actually got into ministry 4 years ago, and little by little, my pastors are visionaries. Warren himself, being a pastor, he knows. And he told me one day when I was kind of just cleaning myself out, getting really focused on the Word and finding what my purpose is with God. He said he woke up one morning from a dream that God put in his mind that I was going to join this ministry. He knew Mike from way back when, like he was saying, from the power team. He used to be a pastor in California, and he had Mike and the power team there, and he knew Mike personally. And he kept talking and building me up to Mike. And Mike said, well, bring him along. I want to meet him. And he said that he had this vision, my pastor had this vision that I was going to join the team. Honestly and truthfully, I said, okay, because you never tell your pastor no. But I was working with professional athletes at the time. I had a busy schedule. But he's like, listen, just look them up, check them out, Google them. I'm like, okay. So I Googled, and unfortunately, I saw a bunch of old videos. So what I saw was a bunch of big white guys with mullets. So I said, I came back to my pastor, and I was like, I don't think that's really me. He's like, no, those are old videos. Don't worry about it. I'm telling you, God designed you for this. I saw it. He envisioned this for me to tell you that you're going to join this team. And I went on my first mission trip where I met Mark Rodriguez, who was the vice president at the time, because Mike was still with us. And when Mike passed, he became the president. But Mark interviewed me, and when he came back home, he's like, we got to give this guy a chance. Mike did the leap of faith and brought me in, because normally when you join these types of ministry, you have to be discipled and fellowshipped at least 2 years. I mean, I was barely a year as a Christian. And he says, I feel real compelled, I feel really led, and I want to give you an opportunity. And from that moment on, I never looked back.
I don't think that it's any less true today than it was when a wise person told me this many years ago, that sometimes the best way to learn is to teach.
Yes, that's right.
It forces you to stay ahead of the class or whoever your disciples or students are.
Sure.
And it engages you to the point where if you are doing it for the right reasons, you're going to actually learn faster by teaching sometimes.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you were sort of cast into the fire and had that exact experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because before that, I got into sports medicine. Before that, I'd done a little bit of cardiology. I always hated the book part of it. But when it came to the externship, I was all about it. I was on fire for it. So I always had that type of learning ability. I was more hands-on. So the fact that I was given that opportunity, I took it and ran with it, never looked back again. And you're right. Not only was I eager to learn, but they were eager to teach me. And I've had great, leadership like Warren and other brothers in the ministry that have really taken a liking to me, took me under their wing, and basically show me, because at the end of the day, they kind of paved the way for people like myself to be able to do what I do today.
Historically, the guys who have been members of the strength team have been bodybuilders, former NFL players, sports figures in some way. Reading your biography, I saw that you played some high school and college ball.
That's correct.
Obviously, you're tall.
Yeah.
Did you go on to look at pro at all, or did you ever go any further?
What's funny? What happened was, little by little, I was getting pushed around a lot in the box. I played with people like Udonis Haslem, who still plays with the Miami Heat. These were big guys. I was always very skinny, tall, and fast. I could jump really high and stuff. But when it came to what we call in the paint, which is under the basket, I would get pushed around. And I never forget this coach, a football coach. So, son, what you need to do is you need to come to the weight room. It's like, all right, coach, all right. I wasn't really into that. But I went one day, and I just fell in love with it. I had like this raw power. I was lifting heavy weights that the coach was like, are you sure you've never done this? And I was like, oh, I guess not, and I just fell in love with it. Then I really got into the anatomy and physiology, basically the manipulation of the human body. I loved it. So that's what kind of got me into sports medicine. And it was just the chain reaction, how God works. I mean, he really does pave the way. Now, you still have to walk through those doors, but he kind of just tells you, here, go through here. Now, it's up to you whether you do, and I did, and that's probably where I am today. But you're right, most of us are NFL players, retired professional athletes, things like that. But also a lot of us are senior pastors, which I also think that's amazing. That senior pastors like Warren, like Joe Caldwell also, and many others that I can name that are on the team that take the time from their church, they're shepherds of their church. They take the time to come out and do these things still to this day, because that's how much we believe in what we do.
Warren, you mentioned that you were into competitive bodybuilding.
Yes, sir.
Did you play ball as well in school? What's your athletic background?
Well, I did play. I played high school football, but the way that I ended up playing was kind of different. When I was 15 years old, I was in my classroom, and it was one particular morning the teacher stepped out for just a moment, And when she did, this particular guy stood up in the class and began making fun of me. Because, I grew up in South Georgia. Mom was one of those good Southern cooks. And we ate all the good Southern food as a kid growing up. And it was delicious. I never had a problem cleaning my plate, but that food kind of had stuck to me a little bit. And I'd become what you would call a chubby fella. And this guy made fun of me that particular morning. And everybody in the classroom laughed at me. And, I'll never forget how it made me feel. It was kind of like being bullied. And it's one of the things that we talk about a lot in our school talks, especially in the day and time we live in. But out of that, over the course of time and running into a great guy, a coach, he really built me up and told me not to let what other people were saying about me or what other people thought about me affect, the person I would become. And that really helped me get through that time, and I made a decision to start lifting weights and do something about my physical health. Ate good, started running, and coaches noticed that I'd gotten bigger and stronger, and they asked me to join the team. And during my senior year, I was a number 1 linebacker in high school football there in Georgia. I was a leading tackler as a linebacker, and went on and played at the University of Georgia Southwestern College for 2 years. And out of that, I had fallen in love with weightlifting. So after I got out of football, I ended up bodybuilding. And weightlifting is just part of me. If I don't get to work out, I'm not happy.
Well, people who have never been in that gym environment don't understand.
Yes, sir.
But there are those enzymes and those things that are produced within your body when you get that runner's high if you're a runner or from lifting weights.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, and the reason I talk about the sports is because unfortunately it's a two-edged sword. Our prime athletes, our sports stars have become role models for our youngsters.
Yep. It's true.
They're not always the best people. They don't always make the best choices. Even people who are saved, who try to do the right thing, don't always do the right thing.
Sure. Right.
But unfortunately, we have that element. John, talk a little bit about how that motivates you to be that role model.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things we try to do, one of the things that I always have to maintain and keep my composure of is staying humble. You're right, in the gym world or the sports world, which I've lived both, you're right, there's this sense of basically big-headedness or just conceited or just they can do no wrong. What they don't understand that there's young generations looking up to those people. But what we try to do is we tell them that no matter what, we're all human. And that's why we're supposed to put our faith and our belief and our trust. And our real role model is Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. The Vice President, Joe Caldwell, said it best. We can go to any gym, and we can probably get the biggest guy in there, and we could put a strength team shirt on him, and he'll go on stage. You know what? He might break a bat. He might even, smash through concrete. But is he humble? Is he a promise keeper in his household, to his wife, to his kids? Is he a man of God? Does he have a great testimony? See, what happens is like a funnel system. And then what happens, that funnel starts getting smaller and smaller when we start adding those other very important intricates of what it is to really be a real role model and a person of God and a strength team member. Because again, there's what we like to call in the gym community gym rats. We're gym rats, that's what we are. But there's that funnel system. Are you those other things that are just as important, if not even more important? Because eventually we can teach you how to break a bat. We can teach you how to smash through concrete. It's gonna be hard, but we can still teach you. But we can't teach you is those other things, those other qualities that you're brought up. And it's true what you said earlier, kids nowadays, they see you and listen to you with their eyes first. So it is important to have this persona to walk in, but at the same time, you need to be a good role model, because you're right, there's many out there that are not, and it's unfortunate, but they're looking up to those people.
Yeah, and so often that gym rat world becomes a negative one, because people are juicing, and you got road rage, and you got all kinds of negative stuff going on, and these kids, all they see is the finished product.
That's right.
And unfortunately, they want to take the shortcut.
Oh yeah.
When I was younger, I was the same way. I wanted to, get beefed up, and I was always offered, hey, come on, here, get some Anabol, get some. So man, I don't want that stuff. But the guys who were doing well in competitions were all shooting up before they had drug testing.
Sure.
And some kids, and I say kids because at the time they were kids.
Oh yeah.
They took that path. Yep. But, Lyle Alzado is a good example. He died of cancer, and juicing all those years, wanted to be the big guy, was very successful on the football field.
That's right.
Was it worth it? And you have to answer that for yourself. What do you say to these kids who say, or maybe they don't even say it. They just look at you and you know that they want to be just like you. What words do you use, Warren, to make sure, because you've only got minutes.
Right.
You don't have the luxury of hours and days and years in a ministry with that young child. You're only seeing them for maybe 20, 30 minutes. And really, one-on-one, you may only get 30 seconds.
Exactly.
How do you deal with that to make sure that you've planted a seed?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I always say is that the strength team, we're not here to brag about the size of our bicep or to talk about how much we can bench press, because the real strength of our life is not found in those things. Those things are passing. Those things are temporary. We're all going to get older. And as we get older, muscle tends to sag and drop and different things like that. But the real strength of our life is found in our relationship with God through Jesus. And through that relationship, we have something that's developing in us that's much greater than just physical strength.
That's right.
And that is what we call character. Because character is the person that you are in the dark when nobody else is looking. And character is what will carry you through life. Character is what will hold things together in your life, so that when you are an older person, you're there, and you have the wife, your wife and your children surrounding your grandbabies, and things that really matter in your life.
Right.
Those are the things that character will hold on to. Because being a bodybuilder, I fell into that trap years ago of the anabolic steroids. And I made some bad decisions with those things. But
in all fairness, how could you not with that kind of pressure?
Yes, sir. And it was one of those things, because of being bullied, I was seeking the approval of men, the praises of men. And it was an easier way to climb the ladder of success in bodybuilding. But the thing that's so deceptive about it is the shortcut always brings some very negative things with it. And the greatest thing that I found about the misuse of steroids was that it consumed me. Becoming this huge guy, that became my identity. If I didn't have a 22-inch bicep, then I wasn't Warren. If I couldn't bench press 500 pounds, then for some reason there was something in my life. I just felt inferior, and that was the way I was able to hold on to that identity. But when I came back to the Lord, because going after that, making bodybuilding my little G God, all it did was result in terrible things. I almost lost my wife, my marriage, my business, because everything that I did was about making a name for myself. And I would do whatever it took. But in doing that, I took shortcuts, and those shortcuts really was stealing the things that are really important. Thank God that I came to myself, and I came to the place where I realized that, you know what, I need to come back to Jesus. That's where life is really at. And I asked my wife to forgive me, threw the steroids into a dumpster, walked away from bodybuilding. And out of all of that, because I came back to God, He's taken all of those things that, even though I made bad choices and mistakes, because I came back to God with all of my heart, now a lot of that strength that I developed from those, back in those days, God's able to use it now to touch young people, to share my testimony, and to see people's lives change for Jesus.
John, do you ever see that spark? Do you ever see that gleam in the eye of that young person when you finish your presentation, or you get that chance to speak one-on-one, and you've only had that very few seconds? Do you see that spark that you realize, wow, there's something growing here?
I do, and I say this all the time, usually in our nighttime program. Those are the moments why we leave our families for weeks at a time. I've only been home for a day and a half in the last 3 weeks. I haven't been able to see my daughter take a lead role in a drama class. I haven't, been helping my wife. She has to cover, she has a career of her own. She's having to do daddy and mommy duties. It's a team effort. When we're in ministry, they know that they're part of it too. But just to see the gleam, or just to see that one kid going, hey, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And I could take that opportunity to be like, don't go backwards, be like Jesus, and point to Him. Always point to Him. Always give Him the honor and the glory. That 1 second, that 1 minute, that 1 millisecond is worth it 100 times over. Because again, these kids, they need a better role model to look up to. And I'm not even saying myself, but at least what we can do, because even though most of these public schools, we can't go in there and speak about God or Jesus, but we do invite them to the nighttime program, which there we can. However, we can speak to them about choices, about the right decisions, about their character, about the importance of their character, and making the right choices in life. So yeah, absolutely. I love those moments. We had them 3 times just a few minutes ago in the school across the street at Kate Smith Elementary, to see this one kid just, oh my gosh, and wow, that's amazing. Again, all this stuff is to just attract their attention, to be able to get their attention. Like you said, that attention span, that very short one, we can have it, and only to us when we do those feats of strength, and we can plant that mustard seed of faith.
Isn't that a beautiful school?
Yes,
It's amazing.
Brand new, $28 million school. We were blessed to get that
Yes,
school.
it's
We talked about, well, first of all, Miami by way of New York City. Where do you live now?
I live in Dade County, Kendall, Florida, a city called West Kendall. Actually, my neighborhood is kind of subdivision-like, but it's called the Keys because the houses are similar to Key West. It's a nice neighborhood. We're very congested. I mean, Dade County alone, there's over 5 million people that live just in that county, in the city of Dade. So it's a lot. It is different, but it is very fast-paced as well, similar to New York, except not as much as what we call, I remember growing up, New York was always known as the concrete jungle. We have more grass where I live, so it is interesting, but it's very important to stay plugged into a church, especially in a place like Miami, where you have a lot of distractions in a place like that, even in any other big city. There's many things going on. There's a lot of things that can easily pull you and bring you back into the past and that type of lifestyle that I used to live in. So it's very important to stay focused on the main thing, because for me, one of my biggest fears is to lose my character or lose what I've built because I give in, and one day someone sees me that I spoke in their high school or I spoke in their college or even junior high or something. Hey, you were talking to me about not doing this, not doing that, and yet you're here in a bar with me. What's going on? What is this? For me, that's heart-wrenching. I mean, that sinks into my soul to know that if I were to make that mistake, I'll become a hypocrite. So that's what keeps me in check, being such a big city like Miami. That really helps me stay on the straight and narrow.
Let me just reset this. We'll finish up with our final segment. Stay where you're at.
Okay.
This is great. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Good job, bro.
You too. I know, it's awesome.
You talk about somebody going to fall from grace. Not that I'm the last one in the world that can condemn anybody for it, but John Jones, UFC, the opportunities that guy had, and we still don't know the whole story. But I mean, my goodness,
five plus chances that they've given him, and every single time, if it wasn't juice, it was cocaine. If it wasn't that, it was.
Yeah, I mean, just. Yeah. And he's got his own demons, and he's the only one that it's going to affect, But think of how many thousands of kids, were looking up to him.
Oh yeah.
All right. And you talk about the big city like that, lots of lights, lots of flash, lots of opportunities for kids to look at quick money here, or drug dealers, or the pimps driving the nice cars.
Sure.
And how come I got to work all these years?
Sure.
Warren, Americus, Georgia originally. Where do you reside now?
I still live in Americus, Georgia. I grew up there, born and raised there, southern Georgia. Even though we're not in the big city, I mean, there's still distractions. Even country boys can have distractions.
Absolutely.
There were many things that that I allowed to get in the way of me seeking the Lord with all of my heart when I was growing up. And I was a big hunter, big fisher, and I can remember times where, I'd much rather go fishing than go to church. But, over time I've learned that no matter where you're at, you can be in Miami, Americus, Georgia, you can be on a mission field in another country. You always have to continually stir up that spark of faith that's in you and your love for God, because in this old world, there's always going to be things trying to pull you away from it.
That's right.
What's interesting in the way John put it, the longer you guys do this ministry, the more your extended family grows.
Yes.
So it gets to the point where you can't go very many places where people aren't going to know who you are.
Exactly.
Yes.
Your whole effort is to get well known. The two-edged sword there is that you better hold yourself accountable because
Correct.
somebody else will be.
Correct.
If they don't.
Correct.
How has been your reception so far? I know you've been to some of the local churches and to the schools. What have you experienced here in Chipley so far?
What I've experienced, I've heard, this is true story. I'm going to give you a backdrop of this, what I'm going to get to the point of. I've heard from other fellow team members. Mind you, I've only been doing this almost 4 years. Some guys have been doing it 16, 17, and 20 plus years. I've always heard these horror stories of sometimes, we try, especially this new generation of strength ministry, we try to cater to all churches, small and large, but sometimes the smaller ones don't have the type of financial backing So what we try to do is we become economical and we try to stay in host homes instead of hotels. We never charge a church to come, just like we never charge a school either. We know that the Lord will provide just the same. But with that being said, what I'm trying to say by that is I've heard these stories about the people that they meet that it's just they were a nightmare, or they were just, they were hard to deal with, or they were a disaster. I have never, honestly and truthfully, I have never experienced that, and I have yet to experience it even here in Chipley, Florida. I was here a few years ago before when I met Forrest and stuff, and it was just amazing. I still joke with him that I've never to this day gotten the kind of basket that his wife made me, that my wife still uses. It's a collapsible one, and it's so cool that we still use it, and we always joke around about that. But to me, I've always been a firm believer that in life, it's the little things, and just something so small that they did that for me. While I was away from my family, it went such a long way. And they've done the same thing here. From when we got here, that they made us food baskets. They have us staying, in an apartment. Just all those things, the constant love and love and love. And that's what it is. It's brotherly, sisterly love. It's Christian love. And I've been so blessed with that, because I always say that, because I've had the opportunity, being Hispanic, I was always taught, stranger danger. You can't be so lovey-dovey if they're not related to you. So in the beginning, that was hard for me. But now that I really know what it means to be a Christian, what it really means to see that, is just amazing. And I've always experienced it, especially here in Chipley as well, because there's a few brothers that I went to Dominican Republic with that I got to touch base with them again. You were talking about David earlier. He's one of them, his son, as well as many other people. And I've got to see them again, and just see them, it kind of, it lit my eyes, because wow, we start reminiscing. And I love that. And I've never experienced it, and I hope I never do. But everywhere I've gone, people have just been a blessing. And I only hope that I've been a blessing to them.
Warren, you've been involved much longer, and we're not going to dwell on the negative, but have you experienced some of that not so kind or not so welcoming atmosphere that was changed because of the way you guys profess?
Yes, sir. I'll never forget this one particular church. I'm trying to think of where the city was at right now. I've been in so many different places. It's kind of like Elvis used to say, he'd been all over the world, but he'd never really seen anything. And the strength team, we're so busy. When we get somewhere, it's like, bang, we're right in the school assemblies, going here, going there, and that's what we do. So I can't remember the name of the church, but I do remember what they did was they put me, and we had two other guys, and I mean, these other guys were huge. They're bigger than John Clarence Lee. He weighed like 320 pounds, a monster. And we didn't realize that they were doing this to test us, but they put us in this little cabin. And I mean, this little cabin, it was horrendous. I don't know any other word to say. I mean, we didn't really have any beds to sleep on. They had these air mattresses they had put in there for us. And
well, you put a 320-pound guy on an air mattress.
I mean,
wow, that's how I'm like, whoa.
So we're like, we all get there late at night. We get off the plane, and we're tired, and we get to this place that we're going to stay, and we walk in and we're like, is this where we're staying? And the guy said, yeah, this is where y'all going to be. And we're like, oh, gosh. So we just had to dig really deep, not say anything. The guy left, and of course we were like, how are we going to stay here? We're like, we're going to go buy our own room and this and that. But we held our composure in front of them. And the next day, the pastor and one of the other members of the church came and said, how'd y'all like your stay? Well, Pastor, it was hard to sleep, but we're thankful for it. Well, they took and they said, you know what, we just were testing you guys because we have seen, we've had guys come in before that were doing this style of ministry, because we're not the only style that's out there.
Oh, I know.
And that they had the prima donna attitude. They wanted to be treated like, they were.
So he was testing to see how humble you were.
See exactly what was our motive. And he said, well, the way we reacted to it, we reacted correctly, and they took us down and they put us in this, beautiful home, So anyway, that was one of the times that we could have really had a rough time, but we didn't. But as a whole, I can't really think of one of those kind of situations.
Yeah, but what better example of the fact that you're always under that microscope?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
they're always looking at you through the wrong end of a telescope.
Yeah. Sure.
And because you are successful, because you are happy, isn't it true that the human nature is such, unfortunately, that people want to fault people who appear to be doing well?
Yes.
who appear to be happy.
Sure.
Look at social media. Everybody wants to down everybody else, wants to make you, knock you off that pedestal.
Sure.
What are you doing being hungry? What are you happy? What are you doing being all buffed up and, a fine physical specimen?
Sure.
I hope that something bad happens to you.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But I think that it's probably a good example of what life is all about.
That's right.
And the fact that you have to hold yourself. Do you find you're saved? So right there, you've got a level of conduct and of liability and responsibility. But because of the fact that you put yourself out onto that stage, onto the performance stage, whether it's in a sanctuary, whether it's in a multi-purpose school or multi-purpose room at a school, do you find that you're consciously always aware of the fact that you do have to do just that, hold yourself in a manner in which you would be proud, and you can never really relax until you get to the point where your relaxed state is that state of grace?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
How does that work? Does that take a while after you join the team, John?
That's interesting. I was fortunate enough that from the very beginning, when I hit the ground running, Mike was very strategic with who he put me with. And I guess that comes from experience, him taking many other people under his wings, and it would turn out kind of backfiring. They put him with the wrong person, and they kind of learned bad habits from that person. So he was very intricate with who he put me with. The very first person he put me with was Joe Caldwell, who is now the vice president, and his brother Jonathan Caldwell, who was a pastor, who's now works for the Dallas Police Department and Dallas Special Forces and all that. Great brothers in Christ. As a matter of fact, they have a bloodline of evangelists. Their great-grandfather was a traveling evangelist and singer for the gospel and things like that. So those are the first two I got put on the road with. So just right there, my foundation was already being set in such a solid manner that I started learning right away, how to and how not to act and how to be humble about myself. I always had a humbleness to me because of where I came from, the sports world. And I just didn't like that. As much as I enjoyed, obviously, the financial part of it, I was never a fan of how sometimes they would act. Like you said, prima donna, or too good for anything around them, or the way they would treat others that were beneath them. I never found anything good in that. And I guess it's from upbringings, because at the end of the day, that's a big thing of us. How we were brought up is how we will act with others. My parents never taught me that. So that played a huge part. But I mean, a day doesn't go by that you're right, I don't forget, or I constantly remind myself that I have to stay humble, that I am a servant of God, and all we are is vessels, like ships, and the earth is made mostly of water. But God is the captain of that ship, and He directs us each day of where to go. And as long as you keep that in mind, that He's the captain, and you're just basically a servant or basically a skipper on the boat, things like that won't be that difficult to do. It's when we forget that, and when we say, hey, I got this, God, I got this, and we put Him to the side and then we take over, that's when we fall. That's when we falter. And it can happen to the best of us. I'm sure we could sit here and think of countless pastors that have had mega churches, or countless evangelists that we know of, that at one point in time, they got too big for their bridges. And what happened? They fell because they didn't put God first. And that's what's important. That's what we got to do.
Well said. Warren, I hate that this is just a short segment. I could sit here and talk to you all afternoon.
Me too. I'm loving this.
Is there anything that you would add in the vein in which we find ourselves conversing today? Again, I wish we had 3 hours to talk. Hopefully you guys are going to come back through, and hopefully we'll be able to get you back here to talk again at some other point.
Absolutely.
But is there anything that you would add to what we're talking about today?
Well, the Apostle Paul, he said, I believe it's 1 Corinthians 9:27, the last verse in that chapter. He said, I keep under my body, lest that after I have preached to others, I myself would become a castaway. And it's important for us to realize that there is a part of us that we daily have to keep in check. It's the flesh. It's that side of us that is selfish, that side of us that does want special treatment. We have to recognize that part is there, and constantly see ourselves crucified with Jesus, that old man on that cross, and remember that we are a new person now. John mentioned it best, we have to put God first. And in putting God first, we have to be aware that He is always with us. He's always watching us. And there's something about being aware of God's presence in our life that gives us the strength to act right when we're under pressure.
It's true.
I'll never forget, this one particular church that I was at, and a lot of the deacons were out in the front, and You know, they were out there. All of them were smoking cigarettes before church. You know, and cigarettes won't send you to hell or anything, but we know they're not good for you. Well, they were smoking cigarettes outside the church, and we came in. We went into the church, and I watched every one of them though. As soon as they would go into that church, they would take the cigarette and they would put it out, and they would come in, and they would sit there for an hour and a half, and they wouldn't touch a cigarette. But right after the church service was over, they went out of the building and they'd grab a cigarette and they would smoke it. And I thought about that in the sense of, you know, so many times people, Christians even, they see the church building and they look at a church building as that's the temple of God. Mm-hmm. But the thing about it is God now, He doesn't live in a church building. He lives in us.
Amen.
We are the body of Christ now. And if we could just be aware, the thing that empowers them to put that cigarette down when they go in that church building is they recognize that as this is God's presence is here. If we can realize we are the temple of God, His presence is always with us, it'll strengthen us to put those things down in our life that do hurt our witness and that could harm us and how people see us. And it does have a lot to do with it. If people see you and you've got this bad thing attached to you, a lot of times they'll turn you off.
That's right.
But thank God for His grace, and thank God that He's kept us, and we're still doing this work, we're doing this ministry, and we're seeing so many people touched, and we're very grateful to be a part of it.
Wow. I must ask the right question, because you could not have brought us to a stopping point any better. And between the two of you, you said it all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, I know it's easy to say thank you, but I also know that you guys have a really crazy schedule all week long. But thanks so much for carving out the time. We're getting ready to go to Kiwanis lunch, so at least I can pay you back by giving you lunch. But then you're going to be performing anyway, so kind of working for your lunch. But we really appreciate you being here. Next time you come back, please consider it a standing offer. Anytime you're close by, driving through, get up with Forrest. He knows how to get up with me. Please come by. Love to be able to get some of your other members and certainly have you revisit them.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having us.
I appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
so much. Thank you so much.
Our guests today have been John Andrickson and Warren Alford from Mike Hagen's strength team. What do you say? You heard it all. It's hard to wrap up a segment that hits you so deeply and so precisely in all of the things that you should consider with your everyday life. We are not a religious show. We are not trying to tell anybody how to live. But I dare say that if you follow the example from these two guys sitting next to me right now, that you can't go wrong. We'll be right back.